Hi, I'm Sophie. I talk to researchers about what drives them and what they're passionate about. What's your name and what are you currently studying?
So I'm Somu. I'm currently a PhD student in mechanical engineering at MIT.
What got you interested into this field in the first place?
I was having a conversation with a professor at Caltech. I was already studying mechanical engineering at that time in undergrad. She had mentioned something along the lines of like every age is defined by the material they use in the age, like the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, so on and so forth. That really got me motivated about like being part of the next big material revolution that will happen.
What's a project you're currently working on that you're really passionate about?
So I'm currently working on a project on making really, really scalable, lightweight materials. Think of materials that have like 99.9% air and just that 0.1% or less of actual solid in it. So these materials are extremely lightweight, but they're very, very strong and stiff. And I'm currently working on a way to manufacture them at scale and make the manufacturing cheap. And not just that, by controlling the process itself, you can control how the structure of the solid is at the micro scale. And that gives very interesting properties in different directions and things like that.
What's your process when you're trying to learn something completely new?
The first and foremost thing is I need something to contextualize it. Whenever I'm trying to learn something new, it's not just about learning it, but also being able to immediately use it in something that I'm doing. An example of this is I know machine learning is the big in thing right now. Everyone wants to learn machine learning. You can, of course, go on YouTube and type the word machine learning. You'll see like a million videos of different people teaching different things. My process is definitely not just watching those videos, but trying to maybe find some use for it in my own projects immediately. I'm a huge astronomy buff. I am very interested about all the things that they do in astronomy. There's this problem of finding exoplanets in astronomy where, say, they have a star, and if a star has an exoplanet that's passing in between the star and us on Earth, there'll be a slight dip in the brightness of the star with this planet. So imagine now if a planet has a periodic orbit, every time it passes in front, there'll be a dip in the brightness. And there are several observatories that have like tons and tons of data. And so, as part of this machine learning course that I was taking at MIT, I tried to make an ML algorithm that can look at this data and then classify whether the star has an exoplanet or not. And so, that really made me see the challenges with implementation and how the different tuning knobs actually affect the process. Of course, this is a problem that a lot of people have tackled, but doing it myself gave me a lot more appreciation to the techniques that others have developed.
How do you come up with new ideas or stay creative?
For me, part of it is I know that given that when I'm in the right state of mind, I have a lot of creative ideas that do come up. A lot of my process for creativity is getting myself into that state of mind. And the way I do it, I need a lot of like meditative processes to not think about anything. And I think some of my brightest ideas come up when I'm not thinking about things. I usually meditate quite a bit in the mornings, 40 minutes to an hour every morning. I also really like going on long walks. And it's during these times that I have a lot of, those aha moments of like creativity. And then the next day in lab is just me trying to put it in action.
Which single habit do you think has contributed most to your growth?
I am definitely not the kind of person who would spend like 60 or 70 hours a week working. Like, I just cannot. More of a kind of person who would probably spend like 40 hours a week or less than that. I believe strongly in quality work over quantity. The habits and schedules are in place to enable me to be efficient in those in those 30 or 40 hours in the week. Some of the habits that I think contribute to that are being sort of consistent with my meal timings and meals. I have not skipped a single meal during my PhD, and also being very consistent with my sleep, getting like 7.5 hours to 8 hours of sleep, and also having some of the meditative practices within my day helps me sort of maintain that consistency and keeps my mind and body healthy.
How do you navigate the balance between working hard and working smart?
I'm definitely kind of person who's, in terms of just the work, I'm a very lazy person. Not that I'm lethargic or I'm not doing things, but more so that if there's a shortcut to do something, a reasonable shortcut, I'm not saying something hacky, but something that can simplify the work, I will take it. But of course, there are times when I have to rigorously repeat experiments or do things several times to ensure that it's legitimate. And in situations like that, I think as long as I'm spending a majority of my time like 70 to 80% doing the smart work. I am okay with putting up with hard work for 20 to 30% of the time. I think it's that balance that's important. I think once that balance shifts, that's when either the task becomes so boring where I just not stimulated enough, or it becomes too overwhelming. I feel like I'm not capable to take it on.
The 80% also requires hard work.
Yes.
Thinking about the right things.
I'm a very pensive person in that sense. Like I think a lot. I need to spend the right amount of time thinking. For example, let's say like I could go sit on a laptop, look at every single data point and process every data and everything. Instead of doing that for 3 hours, if I spend 15 to 20 minutes thinking and another 15 to 20 minutes coding, I can make an automatic processor that does this task in another 20 minutes.
What drives you to keep going even when things get challenging?
When things get challenging, I always feel like that's a good place to be, because if it's not challenging enough, I'm pretty sure someone must have done it. And this has happened in the past where I've tried to simplify a problem to the point where once it's not challenging, you look up and there's surely someone who's already solved the problem, exact same problem. The challenging aspect is something I see more positively as a sign that, this is something worth pursuing. But at the same time, I know it can be a bit upsetting especially when you're trying to make something work, but it's not working at all. I tried to break the problem down to the simplest element possible. A lot of times things are challenging because you're trying to tackle a whole bunch of things at once. But once you try to simplify it to a unit that you can sort of grasp, it's much easier. When you start working on a project, there's always a problem statement, but it's very vague. The challenge is not always finding the solution, but rather finding the right question. I think once you find the right question, solution comes almost automatically.
What's the best advice someone has given you?
I think the best advice that I've gotten is to be more kind to myself. I am definitely someone who tries to always be my best self. It's also kind of the way I lead. I try to set the best example possible so people can follow me. But I think that also creates a lot of pressure where I'm not very kind to myself when I fail. In that same context, the advice that I'd gotten was also to when I'm leading, I don't have to make everyone be the best version of me, but I have to make them be the best version of themselves. Part of that means I have to be humble enough to accept that I am not good at everything, and I have strengths and weaknesses, and other people also have strengths and weaknesses. That also means it's liberating to think that because I'm not the strongest in everything, I can also fail in things. It also means I can be more kind to myself, be more compassionate. It also means I can be more kind to other people. It comes from a leadership context, but I think it's very applicable to my own graduate studies as well.
What are the primary sources of funding for your research?
The primary sources of funding for my research are from NSF mostly. But I'm also a MathWorks fellow, and MathWorks is a company that creates the software MATLAB. Those are the two main sources.
Who is your supervisor and how have they influenced your academic interests?
My PI is Carlos Portela, being an amazing PI and just a genuinely good person. I think when I started my PhD, I was not very keen on academia. I was very much I'm going to do my PhD and then go into industry. But I think having been with Carlos for 6 years now, I've never been this interested in being in academia. He's really showed me sort of what it takes to be a good leader. He's also been very supportive of me. One of the main takeaways from my journey with him has been that academia and PhD in general, it's not just about doing good science. It's also about making the right connections and networking. He's been able to introduce me to a lot of amazing professors. Not just that, I think just seeing him, I've learned to interact better with people, to have good quality connections. I learn a lot just by watching him every day.
How do you typically meet new people around campus?
I tend to usually meet people as part of student groups. I've been very active in the space scene at MIT, all the different space affiliated clubs. I've also been very active in the committees and stuff, so I've been the chair for a lot of activities. A lot of the meetups would be through these clubs. More recently, I've also gotten more comfortable, just meeting people at mixers, just being a bit more intentional about basing that connection on conversations and not just solely on activities, and also following up and maintaining those connections.
After accomplishing a big dream, how do you figure out what's next?
Answer to that is very simple. Just make your dream so big that you can't achieve it. I'm not saying that in a negative sense. I consider myself to have failed in achieving the big dream, but I think more so that I definitely have a very, very long term goal that will take me in 15, 20 years. I think there are a lot of steps which are all individually big goals themselves. And I think every time I complete this goal, I always kind of like measure where I am relative to that bigger goal. And as long as I feel like I'm getting closer to that, that's like a nice North Star or compass for me to align myself to what I need to be doing next. There's been times in my career where I've achieved something, but it doesn't necessarily relate to this big goal, and I've had to pivot a little bit. Having goals of different sizes at different time scales
Right.
always helps me correct myself.
In what ways do you see your research making an impact in this world?
I think definitely these lightweight materials would be very, very helpful to make for space applications, particularly because in space, every kilogram that you send to space costs a certain amount of money. So if that same thing, you can make it with material that's half the weight or even 1/10 the weight, equally strong, equally stiff. That's like that much money cost saved in payload cost. This is a long-term project. It will take 5 to 10 years. If I go into academia, I'm definitely very passionate about carrying this with me and developing it further and sort of seeing it through to that level. If I end up going a different route, I still am very excited to see where this sort of project end up, but also taking the skills that I've developed through my research, through my studies here, I am very confident that I can always find ways, especially in the materials realm, to do impactful work for humanity.
Thank you so much for your time and patience. Thank you.